It is time for my annual reaction to all of Disney's latest announcements, this time at their massive experiences presentation from last night at the D23 2024 Ultimate Fan Event. We've got monsters, villains, cars, and Walt Disney? I'm going to rank every announcement from my least favorite to the ones that I just love, and there is so much to cover. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me here on episode 239 of the Tomorrow Society Podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. Well, we did it. We watched the entire 2.5-hour Disney Experiences presentation from the event that we all still basically call the D23 Expo. I did not attend the event in person, but was able to see it all thanks to a few live streamers. I want to give a big shout out to two YouTube channels, SoCal Haunts and Parks and Ron on the Go. I watched the first channel for most of the presentation, but it did start struggling during that song with all the rapid-fire announcements from Darren Criss and Skylar Aston, so I switched to Ron on the Go. He had a better signal. He was a little off to the side, but still had a good view. But then it was such a long presentation that he ran out of power, so I went back to SoCal Haunts and Parks and was able to watch until the end. Great job to both of you for helping us to see the event at home. I know so many Disney fans, from what I was watching those channels to see the show. Disney, I feel like, really missed the mark for me by not live streaming the big events. And I know this is more just what they've done recently, possibly due to the pandemic, and they want to make it special for in-person attendees, especially given how much they announce. But really, this is like free advertising. Yes, you have to pay for camera crews, sound people, and then to edit it together. And also the musical numbers, I think, would have looked really cool. And we do have the Disney Legends panel coming on Disney Plus very soon this week. Maybe this is something they're going to put on there too, and I apologize if they've announced it since this came out. But basically, I think that's something they should have done just for their own benefit as much for ours. So on this show, I'm going to talk about every announcement Disney made, big and small, and give my reactions to the news. Before I do that, though, I have some overall thoughts on what we learned from Disney. First of all, there were so many big announcements, many expansions and big attractions, and they really nailed down the point about not doing Blue Sky. We had heard Bruce Vaughn make this point earlier in the week at like a media preview of a walkthrough, and he did talk about moving dirt. Here's the quote from Josh D'Amaro, which I will say, this quote on every Disney Parks blog post that they put with updates from last night. Here's the quote. At Disney Experiences, Imagineers dream, create, design, and build these stories into real places. And we have Imagineers in place right now all around the world because everything they're going to share with you is in active development. Plans are drawn. Dirt is moving. I just want to be clear about this. We are doing everything you've heard here tonight. Now, I'm not sure if moving dirt means the same thing to Josh as it does to me, but maybe they just mean like they're digging canals for plumbing, electricity, or whatever, because a lot of these, they have not started construction. But the point is very good. And I believe, at this moment, I believe they're going to do all these things. Now, the timing, I'm sure, can change based on supplies and based on everything, weather, who knows what. But it does seem like they are planning to do this because they have never been so direct about what they're doing and even giving dates. Now, I will say one of the big points that I've made in the past is Disney, give us exact dates or years or seasons, and they did a pretty good job of that. In a lot of cases, a lot of times they just said construction will begin, so we don't really know. You could basically add 2, 3, 4 years to each one. But I still think it's great in a lot of cases where they said things were opening at a certain time. You know, it's a little overwhelming to learn about so many new attractions at once. I mean, I made my list and I have 25, and I actually combined a few things, or, you know, some of them don't totally work as their own thing. Some were really old rumors once, and others we hadn't heard anything about. But one in particular, which I'll talk about, very old rumor, something that they announced. I still can't believe that they announced. It's pretty crazy. Another thing, too, is the overall event. In the past, under Chapek, when he was in charge of the parks, it really started to feel more like a corporate meeting. It even felt that way even with Josh D'Amaro when Chapek was still CEO. And I don't want to give this all up to Bob Iger or anything, but I will say the overall vibe felt more like a party, like a celebration. That's all great. I do think they had too many music numbers and a few too many side moments where it's like, okay, we didn't need this music number to be 5 minutes or whatever. And even the Deadpool segment, I felt like was too long, even though it was funny a little bit, it was too long. And then the low end was, of course, the performance of the song that I'm amazed is still so strong in the world lexicon, Life is a Highway, which again, the audio was a little bad, so that one wasn't great. That was a perfect time, though, to step away and use the restroom and come back. Since didn't really, it's like going to a concert when the band plays your least favorite song. There is so much to cover, so let's get right to it. Here are my thoughts on all of Disney's announcements from the Big Experiences panel. Let's do this. Before diving into all the announcements, I did want to mention a few big omissions. You can kind of put some of these at the bottom of the things that I'm excited about, but we had almost nothing for Disneyland Park. And the big one that everyone has mentioned was nothing added to Tomorrowland. Now, it's funny to kind of come in and say, well, you didn't do this when they're doing so much. And clearly with Disneyland Forward and with everything, they're really focusing on Disney California Adventure. We have a lot of announcements coming there in the next few years. But not having anything in that Tomorrowland still feels like something that should have been at the top of their list to address. I think because Disneyland draws such good attendance, and they do have Tiana's opening later this year, that they're just not focusing on that right now. At some point they will, but it may be a while before they do. There is also no update for the Imagination Pavilion, which I feel like every D23 Expo since I started doing this podcast or anything, especially when I've responded to kind of their changes or updates, I always say, no update for Imagination. What are you doing? It doesn't shock me just because Disney had given all that messaging about Epcot having the transformation being complete. But it's still a little disappointing. I mean, there are a few things coming to Epcot, mainly Test Track, which we already knew about. But it still seems like, okay, if you can't do the full new ride yet, do something with the theater. But Disney with everything they're focusing on, Epcot wasn't the focus. But I do appreciate that they're doing a lot at the other 3 parks in Florida and then one of the 2 parks in California, but not Imagination. So we'll hang on to that one for the future. Also, too, we didn't hear much for Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Yes, we do have the new nighttime show in Tokyo. We heard about the new Marvel attractions, which are coming, but overall, there wasn't that much to the international parks. I mean, we did just have Fantasy Springs open in Tokyo and World of Frozen in Hong Kong. So I think the focus now is a little bit on Paris, but especially on the U.S. parks, especially for this particular D23 event. They may have other things that they're going to bring up later. We didn't hear any more about Space Mountain. There really weren't a lot of updates beyond a few, okay, here's when this is opening. A lot of it was brand new stuff or pretty modified stuff overall. But overall, with those omissions out of the way, I'm pretty happy with what we learned from Disney. Yes, they're focusing on IPs, but that isn't super surprising just given how they've been the last few decades. I appreciate the scope and the ambition and just the fact that so many of these updates are so large. And they are not like we might do this or might do this. Everything seems to be they're going to do it. There weren't any announcements too that I hated or that I thought were terrible. And some of you may disagree, I'm sure. But so I'm presenting this as my favorites to least favorites, but this is not really a case. A lot of it has to do with what I'm interested in. So I think it's almost a better way I would talk about it with most interested to least interested, but favorite to least favorite is kind of an easier way to summarize it. But a lot of it just is what I'm interested in, or even in this case, which parks I'm going to be going to. But I tried to give a fair shake, even if, I didn't immediately say, well, Shanghai's last because I'm not going to go there. It's also what interests me and what could lead to in the future. But let's dive right in. And I'm going to cover everything they announced. If I missed something, I apologize. I think I got it all captured. I spent a lot of time this morning studying the Disney Parks blog and my notes that I had taken last night while watching the show. But we've got 25 entries, 25, and we're going to start at the bottom and move up kind of to go from less exciting to most exciting. Some may surprise you, and some I'm sure you're going to be right with me. Number 25, updates to Fortnite. This again comes down to personal preference in just I don't play Fortnite. It is interesting. They're going to add more Disney content to it with the Epic Games connection. Disney villains were going to be added. We're going to have The Incredibles from Pixar coming soon. New Star Wars character. And there's going to be some type of shared universe going down more in the future. Marvel has Absolute Doom. Not much to add here. I will say that I still think it was strange that they were streaming that presentation in Fortnite, but it also makes sense that then they spent a while talking about it. And, hey, Disney purchased Epic Games. They're going to find a way to, make it a valuable connection. Hopefully this isn't the case like where Disney's really involved in a game thing and then kind of goes away. But beyond that, I think I don't have any issues with it. There were a few announcements of actual attractions within that I'll give their second entry. But just it kind of ground the night to a halt a bit for me. I don't know. For some people in the audience, it may be great because I know Fortnite is really popular. I just haven't played it, so it doesn't mean much to me. Okay, number 24, 2 new Cars attractions coming to Frontierland at the Magic Kingdom. One is going to be a racing attraction, a thrilling rally race through the mountains, as they described it. You're going to go on wild terrain as you race through the landscape, go by geysers, go through mud holes. Second attraction, geared towards younger racers, fun for the whole family. This is going to be in the Frontierland area. So we don't really know exactly how this is all going to work. This was almost like a red herring from what we hear later, which it'll be a while before I get to that one. Because in my head, I went, oh, that's what they're doing. This is what they're announcing for Beyond Big Thunder. And they did not use the term Beyond Big Thunder. They said a new area in Frontierland. But my thought is this has to be, the connection seems to make sense that it would fit with the style of Big Thunder. I had this thought for a second, like, oh no, they're not replacing Big Thunder. But no, they're not. That would be awful. But the style could kind of fit there, where I feel like the later one fits more next to Fantasyland. This one seems to fit more next to Frontierland. And I appreciate that Disney is investing in the Magic Kingdom. I think that is great. The Magic Kingdom is such a popular park. It needs more attractions. It's weird to say that, the park that gets the most people needs, but you want people to have a good experience. You want to add, they've talked a lot about capacity, and that's another thing that I really am spotlighting is very few just straight replacements or overlays. In a lot of cases, there are some that are. But in this particular case, you're not replacing something that's already there. You're adding capacity to the park. And so these Cars attractions function well in that way. Me personally, I don't really need Cars attractions in Florida. We've got the great Radiator Springs with Radiator Springs Racers. And I know I should again point out, this is not a port over of Radiator Springs Racers or anything from there. This is beyond Radiator Springs. It's not in that area. But the idea of them expanding, hey, I'm glad they're not just getting rid of Frontierland. I got a little nervous there. So, Frontierland is kind of becoming a mishmash now where you've got all different types of frontiers where you have, you got Country Bear Jamboree, but then you have Tiana's Bayou Adventure, Big Thunder, different eras each one, and then now Cars, which I don't know what era that is since Cars don't talk or anything as far as I know in real life. But interesting announcement, just kind of didn't do much for me personally. I feel like there's a lot more interesting things you could do there. I'm sure I'll enjoy the attractions and it's going to be well done. It's just one that, and my gauge from the crowd and cheering also seemed to be, from what I heard, it wasn't that exciting. But just for me, it's one like, oh yeah, they announced that. But hey, capacity is a plus. New attractions are a plus. Just not the most exciting one for me. Number 23, Zootopia show is going to open in winter 2025. Now, we already knew about this one, so this is more they gave an update. And to me, winter 2025, they said next winter. So to me, it's not like January of 2025. To me, this is like December, like near the end of next year. So them giving more of a time frame was good. They didn't really give any new updates. We did see they have a new poster, and we know the name of the show now is Zootopia Better Zoo-gether. Like not a zoo kind of, but not really at all. At the Tree of Life Theater, again, it's going to feature Judy Hopps, Nick Wilde, all the friends of Zootopia. This also makes sense with the official announcement on Friday of Zootopia 2, and it says it's going to take guests on an adventure through different biomes seen in the film and opens next winter. I just don't really care. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to dismiss anything. This is something that kind of bothers me sometimes with online discourse where somebody's just like, oh, I hated it, or oh, it's stupid, or oh, or you just missed the whole presentation because they didn't do one thing. It's Tough to Be a Bug is a fun show to me, has some fun gags, but I admit I don't always go and see it. We did not go the last time we went to Animal Kingdom in 2022. It's not something that I feel that precious about, and I am really happy that if they're going to do Zootopia and they feel like it has to be in Animal Kingdom, I'm glad that that's the only thing. I'm glad, too, that they did not add a full Zootopia land either to Animal Kingdom or to all the updates to Disney California Adventure. I thought it was a fun movie, but I just don't feel like I have a connection as much to the characters, even more to things like Moana and Coco and other films where I feel like I could really see it. And Encanto, I don't have the same connection to Zootopia, but having this film, I think it's an okay place for it, and I think it'll be fine. Just doesn't do that much for me overall. Number 22, we have a new lounge coming to Spaceship Earth in 2025. This kind of came really quickly for me because, again, it came during that rapid fire song, which I kind of did enjoy that. If you're going to announce a bunch of things, do it in kind of a fun way with those guys, though I admit from very far away at a live stream, I didn't even realize at first who they were. Darren Criss from Glee, Skylar Heston from So Help Me Todd. And so they reeled off a bunch, but one of them was a new lounge in Spaceship Earth. Now, what I couldn't understand, is this the old corporate lounge that now they are going to make into a lounge? Is that what it is? Or is this putting this in the Project Tomorrow area? That's what I'm a little unclear of. It did look kind of cool. I'm guessing where the corporate lounge was since they don't have a sponsor. The description says this is going to take inspiration from the geometric sphere, which I don't think that's what it's called. This Zen space for families to gather and enjoy refreshments will be draped with rich textures and warm metallic tones, giving it a mysterious and elegant intimacy. Those words almost mean nothing to me. But, for me, I'm like, that's cool. If you want to add, as long as you're not, when I saw Spaceship Earth, I got very nervous at first, like, oh no, what are they doing? Are we going back to making some update? And granted, some part of me is like, well, I'd like to see them updated. And then part of me is like, maybe I don't. But regardless, a new lounge at Spaceship Earth, that's cool. I'm also going to jump right into number 21, which is an update on the Pirates Lounge at the Magic Kingdom, which is still definitely happening. Both are going to open in 2025. It sounded like the Spaceship Earth one would be sooner than the Pirates Lounge, but I'm still curious, too, about, I think the Pirates Lounge is going to actually have alcohol. I know Spaceship Earth Lounge, I'm sure would, even if they mention families, but they just say, like, raise a toast to the pirate life. They added some new artwork, which makes it look pretty cool. A seaworthy selection of grogs and grub, so food and drinks. Both of these are cool. I don't have a big problem with either one. I listed the Pirates one ahead because I feel like you could do some cool things with pirates and making it fun and connect to Pirates of the Caribbean. And Spaceship Earth, well, part of me is like, well, they're keeping Spaceship Earth. They're going to have a lounge. They're going to keep telling you, which I didn't think it was going to go. But just in general, these more places for people to hang out and chill and get away from the paths. And Disney gets money out of it. If they do well with the theming and everything, I think are totally fine. Number 19, we have an opening date for Tiana's Bayou Adventure, opens on November 15th, 2024. The interesting thing about this, which they didn't really get into last night, but is that Bayou Country is going to be the new land taking over for Critter Country, and this may have already been announced. I just thought it was interesting. That is still going to have Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes as an interesting part of that, but it is interesting, too, that it's going to be Critter Country is no more, and also they're including, which they've already announced, the Hungry Bear Barbecue Jamboree. Most of this came from the Disney Parks blog post more than the actual event. The big thing is, again, I appreciate that they gave a date. I know that we expected it, but still, they could have been like often where they wait till 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away, that they said it's opening November 15th. Now, granted, we're only about 3 months from that, so it's not that far, but I appreciate that side of it. I think, when I think there's nothing for Disneyland, I almost forget that they have a new Tiana's because we've already had it in Florida, and I'm not currently going to be going there in the next few months. So that's interesting. We didn't hear anything more about the Haunted Mansion or any of those updates for Disneyland. We mostly just got this and one other one that'll come in a little bit. But hey, I like the opening date. I don't mind the retheming of the land. I think it's kind of interesting to find a way. I don't know how Winnie the Pooh's going to totally fit in this Bayou Country, but it is interesting to kind of carve out this little corner there, which is kind of what they've already done with Critter Country. It makes me wonder if we'll ever see anything like that happen in Florida. That was one of the rumors. People thought they might kind of switch over Pecos Bills and have some sort of New Orleans Square or some other corner there from Frontierland, which doesn't mean they won't do in the future, but we at least don't have that now. Number 19, we did learn the obvious news, which I thought we already knew, with Test Track is opening in 2025, again, part of the same song. What I found interesting is I felt like they gave a little more information on the Disney Parks blog. Now, this is a bit of long reading here, but I found this really interesting. It says a test track is going to celebrate today's innovation while highlighting the past, present, and future. The queue will feature 6 distinct exhibits, and with each room celebrate the vehicles and people behind the vehicles that push the envelope and help get people to our next chapter in our motion journey. That right there is interesting because I feel like they're looking at the past and all that, but they're really looking at the history. This is less about looking forward and as much just about kind of like World of Motion did, where you go back to the past to the future. New show scenes will be added, showcasing technological advances and how our lifestyle and relationship to mobility connect everyone. Enjoy a joyride through scenes focusing on onboard technology, customization, and personalization. That's interesting. I wonder if all that seems to think that maybe we still have something to do with our own cars. And then it says, followed by a trip through a scenic outdoor route, reminding us all of the joys of driving, taking in the world around us, and spending quality time with friends and family. I assume all of that right there is still the end part of it. And then it says, construction on this reimagined experience has already begun. Eagle-eyed visitors might already have picked up on the fact that the new exterior harkens back to the original pavilion design. I know that was a lot of reading, but I will just say I find it really interesting that they're being so specific, but also this feels like a pretty significant redo. And the fact that they are adding new show scenes, I assume during kind of that part where you kind of scroll around faster there, unless they slow that down. But I think all the news I'm hearing is pretty positive. I like the fact they're redoing the queue and actually adding new exhibits because we're probably going to spend a lot of time in there if this is as popular as it might be with the new updates. I mean, they just said 2025. It would have been nice if they said like summer or fall. My inclination is going to be late in the year, at the earliest in the summer, probably in the fall, but we haven't heard anything yet. They may go all the way till if they do a Destination D23 next year before they make that announcement. All right, now we've gotten through some of the ones that just are more updates. Let's get to some new stuff that was surprising. Number 18, Walt Disney, A Magical Life. A new show coming to the Opera House at Disneyland with WDI's first audio animatronic of Walt Disney. Oh boy. This show is going to debut next year. And I will say up front, the thing that worried me the most was that this was it for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. But they did clarify something which I think is super smart, which is after its initial run, the attraction is going to play in rotation with Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Good job. I made a joke to Elise and I said, maybe they can just put up like a mustache and a beard and just use the Lincoln animatronic and just put different clothes on him and people won't know it's Walt Disney or Lincoln. Now, obviously, they're not going to do that, but that did make me laugh, just that idea. I will say that there is a part of me that finds this to be the most interesting thing they announced the whole night. Just to be fascinating. The idea that they're going to do an animatronic of Walt and actually present his life and everything else. I assume, again, you know how Lincoln, they kind of have the pre-show where they set you up and include part of it. And then they have other aspects of the show like Two Brothers and everything else. I wonder if they'll do something here with other aspects like video and other things. And then Walt stands up and says a few things. There are so many ways this could be horribly wrong. The fact that you think about the Obama animatronic, which looked kind of strange, and then the really weird Trump animatronic that they did, sculpting someone that people know so well. Like the image they had in that exhibit, I didn't see it in person. They had kind of the recreated image of Walt. It was not actually from real footage, was strange. They say the technology's up to par here, but this is going to be interesting. I assume since this is the only thing that I know of at Disneyland that's going to come in 2025, this is likely going to be a big centerpiece of Disneyland's 70th anniversary. I didn't list it as a separate one, but they did have John Stamos come out and sing and then talk about how there's going to be a celebration of the 70th anniversary. Of course, me naively at that point thought, perfect, let's bring back the People Mover. Let's make some updates. Now, granted, I suspect this is going to be more in line with things with entertainment and elements like that versus special events, all that versus new attractions. But this Walt Disney attraction is going to connect to the 70th anniversary, I suspect, since it is coming next year. Again, it's at the Main Street Opera House, but I hope also, too, with the rotation, they don't pull in Impressions to France and just have Mr. Lincoln go like Great at Night. I suspect it's going to be in rotation, possibly meaning even, okay, this one plays for a few months, this one plays for a few months, that type of thing. I don't think it's going to be every day. You don't know what you're getting. I don't think it's going to rotate within the day because obviously there are elements of the show that needs to be changed out. So that's going to be really interesting, but I'm glad Mr. Lincoln is staying. And really, there were rumors about this one, about a Walt Disney animatronic, but it still kind of fascinates me that this is something that they're doing. I don't know. It's pretty crazy. It's crazy to think about. And I put it at 18 because I just didn't really know where to put it. Because part of me finds this the most interesting, but then part of me kind of finds this to be a little terrifying. So I put it here thinking, it's not one that I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see it. Part of me is just going like, this is going to be interesting. Of course, Elise mentioned that they better get new seats because apparently the seats in the Great Wilderness of Silicon were really uncomfortable. I doubt it that they'll do that, but you never know. Maybe they will update the whole theater, but they did do updates to the theater fairly recently with the latest show, Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln. But this is going to be interesting. The online discourse when this opens. It's going to be something to see. I have a feeling some people love it; they'll be in there crying. Others will find it to be abomination. I'm kind of in the middle, more okay with it, but can see ways this could go wrong. Number 17, Reach for the Stars Nighttime Spectacular coming to Tokyo Disneyland. This is coming, and this may have already been announced. I did not know about it at the time. It's going to debut on September 20th, 2024, which is only about a month away. That comes from TDR Explorer. And this is a nighttime spectacular on Cinderella Castle. I find it interesting that they have not had one since Celebrate Tokyo Disneyland ended in 2019. It's a 20-minute show. It's going to have characters from Walt Disney Animation Studios, Pixar Animation Studios, and Marvel characters. You can see where Marvel is becoming a much bigger part of a lot of the Disney parks. But I think this is great. I have not been to Tokyo Disneyland, but I think having a nighttime spectacular on the castle is always a positive one. More on that later. Having nighttime entertainment in general is great. And I'm kind of grouping a few of these together now, so I'm going to roll back into number 16. Disneyland Paris has a new nighttime show coming in January 2025. Disneyland Paris is going to unveil a nighttime spectacular. It's going to have songs from Disney and Pixar. They do such a good job with nighttime entertainment and shows. Again, I have not been there. I've only been there once. I was there in 2006. That really doesn't connect at all to this. But I think the fact this is going to come in January 2025, and they're going to use projections on Sleeping Beauty Castle and also do something kind of similar to like Happily Ever After, where they're going to have projections down Main Street, which has not happened before in Disneyland Paris. I think that's also really interesting. The fact that they continue, it seems like they have new shows just constantly. They just keep really pushing the envelope, and I'm sure this is going to be, spectacular. But this nighttime show, again, they kind of rolled through all this, but this is where they gave some attention to some other parks. And I really appreciate that Disney is continuing to focus on the things that make Disney parks special. And a lot of it is things like parades, nighttime shows, entertainment, not just the full-on attractions. And you saw an attention to that, where yes, we have our big expansions and our updates, but we're focusing on things like entertainment. I even mentioned those lounges, more places to hang out, all those factors. We heard nothing about resorts at all, which is fine, but it's interesting how much we're going attractions focused, but these types of attractions interest me. And that's going to lead us right into number 15, which is the Adventure Bay nighttime show. Disneyland Paris, again, this is at their Disney Adventure World Park. Terrible name, but that's okay. Used to be the Walt Disney Studios, if you're not aware. In 2026, they're going to have an all-new nighttime show in a big water area, which is known as Adventure Bay. And this nighttime show, here's the crazy thing. They're going to use water drones. I don't even totally understand what that means. I think it's drones that can be underwater or possibly drones that can fly up and into the water and back. And also going to have water screens, fountain special effects, so more World of Color-esque. But water drones, they've done so many interesting things with drones at Disneyland Paris already with their shows. But I'm kind of fascinated with what they're doing with this entire Adventure World Park. A little bit like DCA, where they're completely remaking it from what it was initially. DCA, has done it in multiple stages, where you had, of course, World of Color, and then the big Buena Vista Street, and then Cars Land Avengers Campus, and now everything they're doing, which we're still going to get to. But just what they're doing there is really interesting, and I love the fact they're having a new type of drone that is coming together for that park. Number 14, a new Spider-Man attraction is coming to Hong Kong Disneyland. We're kind of roping this together with number 13, which is a new Spider-Man coaster to Shanghai Disneyland. Both of these were part of a series of announcements near the end from a Scott Trowbridge, who seems so excited, but seems a little awkward. I just think he's always been that way, but he's obviously staying very busy, has a lot of past with Spider-Man, of course, going back to, I believe, his work with Universal and everything else. But he's recovered from the Galactic Star Cruiser to work on these. And I will say, these interest me as much because of how much Disney's focusing on Spider-Man. It doesn't surprise me that Disney is continuing to add Marvel attractions to their parks. At some point, it wouldn't surprise me to see more in Paris, but that park is getting so much. But it's interesting, too, that we didn't find out that much information, but we're going to dive into the DCA updates later. But again, these probably would be even higher if I had immediate plans or near future plans to go to these parks. But they still interest me enough where I wanted to talk about them kind of here in the middle. The first one from Hong Kong, Tony Stark has invited his friend, his new Stark Industries intern, Peter Parker, to showcase some new inventions. But unfortunately, this means one of Spidey's most formidable villains from the concept art appears to be Dr. Octopus, is going to be involved, and we get caught in the middle when we're trying to help Spider-Man protect the new tech. I don't totally understand what type of attraction this is. It interests me, too, that we're saying we're trying to help Spider-Man. So is this some variation of the Web Slingers attraction, but different because we are Doc Ock's involved and there's more to it? It looks to be some sort of simulator attraction. But who knows? I hadn't really thought about it, but maybe this is some sort of next evolution of that technology. Even the ride vehicle looked kind of strange. And obviously, Hong Kong already has the Iron Man attraction using the Star Tours technology. So it's interesting to me. I don't think he said another attraction, so I don't think this is replacing that. I think this is in addition to it. But it's interesting, too, that they're going to have then 2 simulators in that Stark Expo area, along with the kind of underwhelming Ant-Man and the Wasp replacement for Buzz Lightyear. Still, that's a lot of Marvel there, and it's super interesting to me that they've carved that out in the Tomorrowland area, because that only has one park, that there is so much Marvel kind of going into that area. We learned a little bit more about the coaster, and the reason I listed it higher is just due to that understanding. But an all-new Spider-Man thrill attraction, but this is another one where Peter Parker has gotten himself and us in a bit of a tight spot. This is a coaster. Now, from what I could tell, look, they show this coaster track with the vehicle going by Spider-Man, which makes me wonder if this is some sort of variation on the Cosmic Rewind technology. Because in a sense, it says we're going at very high speeds, which that one does with its launch, but you could have visuals and images of Spider-Man and possibly some villains going by while you're riding, and kind of that story coaster idea. You know that they're going to continue to use similar attraction technologies, so it makes sense to me that then they would want to reuse that. Now, I don't have anything official that tells me they're using that type of technology. That's just based on one piece of concept art, and you know how much we can all wrap ourselves up there trying to figure out all the concept art. But I will say, it's cool. It's interesting, again, that they're focusing on Spider-Man, but it's cool that they are continuing to add Marvel attractions to these other parks, and I think they're going to continue to do so. And especially, I think we'll also find stuff in the future in Walt Disney World, but they have a lot of other things going on. Obviously, still hampered there by the Universal contract deal. Now, maybe that will never change. Maybe it will. But in the meantime, Disney's going to really use all of their Marvel characters and what they can do, especially Spider-Man, all over the world beyond at Walt Disney World. Number 12, Disney Cruise Line adds 4 new ships. Woo! So this is one where some people, this is number 1. And I totally understand. For me, I didn't really know where to put this because I feel like it's super interesting and really impressive that Disney's going to ultimately have 13 ships. They currently only have 5 operating, but 4 more are in the works, including things like the Destiny that we've heard about and the Adventure and some of the other ones. Now they're going to add 4 more. Wow. 4 more. That's crazy. All these new ships are going to ride between 2027 and 2031. So basically 7 years from now, Disney's fleet is going to have gone from 5 to 13, assuming things don't get delayed and everything else. That's really impressive. It shows just how valuable and profitable and how much they think that Disney Cruise Line is a growth entity. Whereas the parks, I know they're treating them now like a growth entity, but for a while kind of seemed more like a mature property where they would just do smaller things. Disney Cruise Line, I think they think is really a way to capitalize on growth with the cruise market continuing now to have rebounded from the pandemic and everything else. The people are still excited and people really appreciate Disney Cruise Line. And I know they charge a lot, but from everything I hear, I have not been on a Disney cruise. So this is a big blind spot for me. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, partially just due to the cost and how much I love the parks and attractions, but also just motion sickness for my wife and everything else. Not something we're likely going to do anytime soon. But I still find it really interesting. I have a lot of friends and people I know that are really into Disney Cruise Line, and I'm sure are just blown away by this news. The other thing is the Disney Destiny big theater show is announced and was going to be themed to Hercules. That's cool. Hercules, has some good songs. It fits really well as a musical. And then also we saw some really cool concept art of the Moana stage show on the Treasure, which has already been announced. But wow, the effects on that look to be pretty impressive. That is going to be something. Disney Cruise Line fans, I think you're going to be super excited. Obviously, I don't want to speak for you, but from everything I've seen, Disney is going all in on cruising. We've already noticed that just with everything coming. It seems like Disney, with Lookout Key and everything, regardless of what people think of that, with the flies and the long walk and everything else. But Disney seems to be going all in on cruise line and cruise ships. And I'll leave it to people that really cover it. There are great podcasts and blogs out there that do so to really dive into it. But for me, I found this to be super interesting because they didn't spend much time on anything beyond the parks, which for me, I'm like, hey, great. That's what I like. But it was interesting. They took the time to have this. And, you had All for One singing, singing I Swear. I think that was them. But just overall, very interesting updates with how much Disney is going into the cruise line. Number 11, a new Coco attraction is coming to Disney California Adventure. This surprised me given that it followed another announcement, and there was one later about Disney California Adventure. I wasn't surprised that they had Coco. I thought that Disney might put it in the Beyond Big Thunder area. I know there was originally some thought maybe that it would be there based on what we heard 2 years ago at D23 Expo. But this is going to break ground in 2026. I love this as a boat ride. Yes. So cool. It looks like something that easily could have been in place for Grand Fiesta Tour. Who knows? They may have, because there were some pretty strong rumors that was going to happen. They may have kind of put those plans into place and then changed it up a bit. I think it's great, though, that this is not an overlay of something like Grand Fiesta Tour. This is its own new attraction, which I'm sure, just judging by even things like Ratatouille with the exterior theming, that Disney's going to do a good job with the theming on this. And just from what we saw, it just looks to be super cool. We see on the concept art, there's a boat ride going by a bunch of characters from the movie. I don't really understand where exactly this is going to be in DCA. Like where does it fit best? I don't really know. I feel like within 3 to 4 years, Disney California Adventure, that one side of it is going to look so different than it does right now. Now, they didn't announce about closing anything because you could always look and be like, are there areas, do we really need Goofy Sky School or whatever? It seems like, though, just given with the focus on adding capacity, that much more likely it's going to be falling into some sort of expansion pad, which was granted with Disneyland Forward, and they're really going to expand the scope of the park. Maybe where that big building that when I went was like a Marvel shop could be used for an attraction area. It's hard to say how everything's going to look. I assume the Hyperion Theater will remain. That seems to be something you'd want to have over there. But just on that end of the park, I feel like that's where they're likely to expand. More on that in a bit. I think Coco's a very strong film, and it's one of those two that emotionally is strong. And I think that's really important. Because when you have films that, even like Avatar, one of the things that people don't connect with as strongly, a lot of us don't, is we just don't emotionally connect to it as much. Like I felt much more emotional writing Flight of Passage than I did watching either of the films. Not because I had the connection to the film, just because it was such a strong experience. Now, for Coco, to stick with that, I think the characters, and especially the whole thing with the grandma and everything that happened there and the song Remember Me, there's a strong emotional connection, which is why this film has had more staying power than some films that even came out more recently, or some that might even be considered more popular. It's just there's a strong emotional connection, and the music is so good. And if you have an attraction, you've got things I like in Disney attractions. 1, boat ride. 2, strong music. 3, just one that anyone can do. All these things are in spades from what we've learned from this attraction. And now if it's going to break ground in 2026, that thinks you at least got to be thinking 2 years there. maybe 3 to build it. I mean, again, if you're breaking ground, let's say 2 years, so 2028. That's the one thing I got to think about here is that while they announce so much, we still have to kind of kick things. I think there's going to be a period. We do have some things coming next year, and that's where you do benefit from things like even at the Magic Kingdom where you have the Pirates Lounge or Spaceship Earth Lounge or Test Track coming or some of the other elements, that you do have things coming in 2025, but I feel like Disney is not going to have as many blockbusters coming out and almost in a sense cede some ground to Epic Universe, and not purposely so maybe, but that's kind of what they're doing. But I feel like once you get into, I mean, we do have the Zootopia show late next year, but once you really get into like 2027, I feel like just with so many things being announced now that are breaking ground and that have already broken ground, it seems like you're going to have just near the end of this decade, just a wealth of things. And at Disney's really kind of playing, I wouldn't say the long game, but think about what I just mentioned about Disney Cruise Line. Same sort of time frame, 2027 to 2031. Disney seems to really be building up power. And I also feel like with so many sequels on the movie side that they're also trying to kind of build sure thing hits in a sense, like we've just seen this year with Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, that when you do, people like these characters and like these stories, people will go to the movie theater for. It's not that, oh no, everybody hates Disney or something. No, it's just people are going to go to familiar stories. Unfortunately, that's true with attractions. But in this sense, I feel like I'm almost convincing myself maybe to move this up higher, but I feel like the top 10 are pretty strong. But this could easily be a little higher, and depending on the execution, might even be something that I enjoy even more than putting it at number 11 on this list. But there's really nothing that can go wrong from here on out. Okay, we have reached the top 10 now. And this is number 10, which I don't know that much about, but I think is really cool. The new Lion King attraction at Disneyland Paris, which again is going to be in the second park there. And it looks like a log flume. Actually, the outside of it makes it look a lot like Splash Mountain, which I know it's not going to be the same, but just the way they show that drop with the rock and everything else around it definitely feels that way. With the real focus here, as you are going to the caverns beneath Pride Rock, and then you're going to go alongside Simba's journey from cub to king. And according to the Disney Parks blog, it's going to feel like you've stepped right out of the movie. Okay, I'm talking more about the animated film. And they did reference the 30th anniversary of the film. So my thought is that while this, I mean, they're not going to be animated characters, but this is going to look back more to the original film. However, with Disney still having the Lion King film and now the new Mufasa film, obviously there may be some crossover there. But I think this is looking very exciting. And also, this is part of a new area to the park dedicated to the Lion King, which is also going to include dining, shopping, and character meet and greets. So it's more than just an attraction. The attraction is the centerpiece, but I think it's going to look really cool and just fitting in. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. If Disney's really trying to flip around and turn the Adventure World, if I got the name right, park, into something that's kind of a best of with a bunch of different immersive lands and everything, a little bit kind of like what they did with Fantasy Springs, but doing this throughout an entire park, adding on to things like Tower of Terror and Avengers Campus and everything else, then I think they're going to get a lot of mileage, and the Lion King really fits well because you can really make it look cool. And everyone says, well, this could also fit in Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom already does have the Lion King show, but I do think that that was something that I considered as maybe another area in the Animal Kingdom. But hey, I like the Disneyland Paris, and that park is getting so much love because they deserve it. The main castle park is so cool. To bring this in and then have something focused on the Lion King, then have another water ride. Regardless, I don't think it's going to be like Splash Mountain. It probably won't be as long, but still just there's a lot of cool things. Because Disneyland Paris, unlike a lot of the other resorts, where Walt Disney World has Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Disneyland is going to have Tiana's Bayou Adventure. They still have Splash Mountain in Tokyo. And, so there's a lot of water rides where you don't have as much of that because Paris does get a lot colder. But, it still gets warm too in the summer and stuff. So that is one thing about Disneyland Paris, that they don't really have the same collection of water rides there, though obviously they're going to have one with the Frozen attraction, which I believe will be Frozen Ever After. And they also did mention that World of Frozen is going to open in 2026. I don't know if the year had been mentioned yet, but that's a big addition. I don't know when this Lion King thing will probably be later. But still, this feels like a no-brainer and I think is going to be a strong area. Let's move on to number 9, which shocked me, I gotta say, which is even the way they presented it. This is Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run getting a new mission featuring the Mandalorian Grogu. I was shocked, but it's a no-brainer, so it's like both. But Dave Filoni gets up there, and they're talking about Fortnite, and they're going through all the different characters and everything else. Dave Filoni's like, well, while I'm here, why don't we talk about something else? It was a really nice way to present it. Not like, let's talk to Jon Favreau for 15 minutes like they did, and then just have a meet and greet. No, the fact that he kind of does like a throwaway, like, oh, by the way, we're going to do this. And I thought it was going to be for Star Tours, but they've done some recent updates to Star Tours with Ahsoka and Andor and everything else. So I thought, okay, they're doing something new relating to the film, which The Mandalorian Grogu coming out in 2026. And no, this is going to be a new mission for Smuggler's Run. Now, it's unclear if this is just going to replace the other mission or if this is going to be in addition to it, or if you're going to be able to pick. I assume while initially it's going to be the main thing you do. But how are they going to do this? Is Hondo Anaka still going to be there? Are they going to replace that with a Mandalorian and Grogu animatronic? Ooh, that would be interesting. They didn't really give us much info, but the fact that, I recently did my Updating Galaxy's Edge podcast, and one of the things I said is they have to get new missions for Smuggler's Run, because I think there's a lot of potential there. Obviously, the Falcon looks awesome, has a great pre-show, and the Q is cool. But they need to have more different things you can do. Now, hopefully, this gives you more to do than the other one, and maybe there's some variations to it. They're really pushing the Unreal Engine, but this is one of those where we got to a point. This was pretty late in the show, so I got to a point where I thought, okay, they're not going to do anything with Galaxy's Edge. They're not going to. And I should mention another omission. They didn't mention anything about what they might do with Galactic Star Cruiser. So that I didn't really expect it, but I know some people hope that was it. That was another omission, but not a surprising omission for me. But the fact that they are doing this with Smuggler's Run at both coasts, I'm assuming, obviously they're not going to just do one versus the other, I think is great. It still doesn't fix a lot of my concerns with how Galaxy's Edge is, but it's a step in the right direction. And the fact that they are willing when they have a new film, I hope this film is a huge hit. And then maybe they can do kind of the Star Tours thing where if you have other films and other changes, you can then make more differences and variations, because that is the strength. Smuggler's Run is a fine ride. I have fun doing it. But the really benefit is if you can make it, there be variety or mix it up or have a rotation, it's going to really bring people back to that attraction more and more. And also you're going to give just more excitement there in Galaxy's Edge overall. All right, the next 3 are kind of all be roped together, but I'm going to put them in order of interest. So I'm going to say this is all about the Tropical Americas addition to Disney's Animal Kingdom, where we did get a lot of information. So I'm going to split into 3 with 876, but it's really one big announcement, but I feel like it makes sense to do it that way. So let's start with number 8, which is the overall land of Pueblo Esperanza at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So the whole area is going to be 11 acres. That's my understanding is this is going to encompass both the Indiana Jones and Encanto attractions. But I mentioned this first because I think there's some interesting elements to this in itself. The overall area is going to apparently have 3 attractions, very similar to how we used to have 3 attractions with Dinosaur, Primeval Whirl, and Triceratops Spin. And so kind of the one playing the role of Triceratops Spin is there's going to be a new carousel. But I do think this is an improvement overall in a lot of ways. One, they're going to have a large hacienda, which is going to be one of the largest quick service restaurants at Walt Disney World. If you're going to open a new land, it makes sense there. Now, what does this mean for the Restaurantosaurus area? Are they redoing that to be this hacienda? They also mentioned this area is going to be closed and constructed in phases. So Dinosaur is actually going to hang around for a while. So I don't know how this would work. Is this hacienda going in an entirely new building, an entirely different place? Or is this a redo of what's already one of the largest quick service restaurants with Restaurantosaurus with all its different rooms and everything else? That is interesting. I'm not sure about that. But they also compared this to Harambe, where this land feels lived in with a long, rich history. I think that's great. They're saying the space is going to be lush and sprawling with a large fountain in the center. And then a woodcarver created a giant working carousel featuring his favorite animals from Disney stories. I would have liked it if they didn't have it related to Disney, but hey, it is modern Disney, I understand. But I do like the fact that they are kind of building an entire area that is, they're not just calling it Tropical America's land. They're calling it kind of this other area, though that's what it's about. Now, we did not hear anything about animals themselves, like what animals we might draw, because I feel like, especially with this kind of introductory area and comparing it to Harambe and everything else, there's really opportunity. You would love if they decided we're going to do a nature trail or do something with animals, where I feel like you could do this with even the Indiana Jones one I'm going to talk about in a little bit, has a Mayan temple. So you could really focus on that area and I hope that we just haven't learned anything yet and there are going to be some animals added. They don't want to give us all the information. They want to give the highlights now. But that's the only question mark I have. Now, they are saying everything in this area, including my next two rankings, are going to open in 2027. They had Bruce Vaughn on stage, and, Bruce Vaughn, he seems kind of like an enthusiastic, I don't know, he's like, really, he's wearing his t-shirt and jeans. He's kind of cool and everything else, but he's not very smooth on stage. He's a little jittery and nervous. But I find him to be really good addition, not only to just Imagineering, given his experience, but also to just the idea that what he brings to these events is just so different and so less corporate, even much less corporate than Josh D'Amaro, who was less corporate than Bob Chapek, but just seems really genuine. And you need that. Scott Trowbridge seems genuine, but sometimes still gets a little too much in the immersive, live your Star Wars story, buzzwords, everything else. This guy, Bruce Vaughn, he seems like he comes from a different era, and the way he dresses, the way he acts, feels more like Imagineering, kind of how I looked at it, when he was involved before he left, well before. And it's great that he's back to Disney. Let's move on to number 7, which is the Encanto attraction. The first ever Encanto-themed ride-through attraction coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom. And I think it's cool. I liked Encanto as a movie. I admit I have not gone back and watched it. A band performed a song that I didn't know was from, and Elise had to tell me, Dan, that's from Encanto. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't remember. I mean, I've heard, we can talk about Bruno a gazillion times, but I haven't gone through the other song. I need to revisit that soundtrack because I remember liking it a lot. But so they did what many had speculated, the idea that Antonio's ability to communicate with animals is going to be a part of this. But before you get to that point, at first it looked like this might be a boat ride, but you can kind of get a better look. It looks like a dark ride, maybe trackless. They did not say that, but it makes sense. If you're kind of going around the house and visiting all these rooms, it might make sense. But if not, it would be a more straightforward Omnimover attraction. But you're going through the house, seeing all these different elements. And at the end, you're going through the room, Antonio's room, which was transformed into a rainforest. And it's like you never know what member of the family you might bump into. I assume you're going to have music going with these various characters when you go by them. This feels like an easy hit. I like the fact that they did not do something like a meet and greet or even, they do a carousel in this area, but they're really going all out. This appears to be an e-ticket attraction, maybe D-ticket, but, a high-tech attraction. Just given what we've seen with some recent attractions like Enchanted Tale of Beauty and the Beast or the Frozen attraction or everything else that Disney did at Fantasy Springs, I'm more optimistic about this type of attraction than maybe I would have been before. I think there's going to be animatronics. I feel like, again, I am speculating a lot. They haven't said all of this. But if you're going to run into these characters and experience it, I feel like Disney really needs to really hit it out of the park here. So, and Encanto seems like the perfect type of attraction to do this. This wasn't a really big surprise, but nothing about this made me go, ugh. Like they didn't just turn it into, you can go in the casita and walk around and then meet Mirabelle. Now, this is a fully fledged attraction. I assume there's also going to be other things like character meet and greets and food and everything else in the area, but makes a lot of sense given the approach that they're taking to Disney's Animal Kingdom. I see, kind of what they're doing and how it could work in the future. All right, number 6, Indiana Jones coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now, I am very excited about this. We get to the point, this is the point where it's like, we're at the top. The home runs, the ones that really excite me. You could easily say, after I write it, this might be number 1 for me. I'm not sure. I don't love Losing Dinosaur. I really wish there was a way they could do it. But I knew when they announced last year with Indiana Jones, and I didn't think they were going to announce that and then not do it. This is not like, we could do this or we could do this. This is something they're going to do. And obviously they stuck with it. It's fun to have Indiana Jones in Walt Disney World as an attraction. And I do really appreciate that this is a new attraction that is different from any other Indy attraction in the world. They are not just redoing it and saying, oh, we have it slightly different or whatever. They're really clarifying this is different. It's a new story. It's, this is described as that he has found a perfectly preserved Mayan temple and he wants to explore it. And then there's some sort of mythical creature deep within the temple that he has to see for himself. And of course, there's probably going to be snakes and other things. This feels like an obvious huge hit for the Animal Kingdom. And this is where I should mention, I know they're replacing 3 with 3, but I suspect, this is kind of the dinosaur replacement. I suspect this will be even more popular than Dinosaur, and not just because it's new long term. And then obviously the Encanto ride is going to be a lot more popular than Primeval Whirl. Hopefully we'll have better capacity, so you're actually gaining capacity. I mean, I think the carousel at best is probably a wash in terms of capacity. But again, if done well, there's going to be a lot of interest. So Animal Kingdom, through all of this, long term, yes, from the current state is adding one attraction to what they have because Primeval Whirl has been closed for a while, but is really just wiping things clean. But obviously, I think the interest and then even having that big new hacienda and everything else in the land, you can explore it. This does seem to be, it's more than what's there now, but you're not really adding that much capacity. But I will say I'm ultimately very positive about this. I would like there to be some animals in this area, but again, it's one of those where it's like, I don't know if that's the direction Disney's going, adding more animal exhibits, just given the general idea and direction of a lot of parks through not really pushing animal exhibits in theme parks like they may have in the past, given thoughts about having animals in captivity and everything else that way. It's not a huge shock that that's not the focus they're going, but I do think this is going to be super popular. It's going to take a lot of pressure off of Pandora. Probably be a case where, especially early on, where it won't be that nearly as hard, especially something like Navi River Journey. Yes, people are still going to ride Flight of Passage, but something like that is going to have a lot less interest overall, I think. And I like Navi River Journey. I'm just saying that having this there is another cool thing. Plus, Kilimanjaro Safaris and some of the other attractions will have a less push. Expedition Everest already is not as popular, partially because you can do single rider and it's not that hard to get through. But it's going to be interesting too, thinking of this in terms of like lightning lanes and everything else, where you're adding basically 2 major attractions to the roster, whereas before, when it was just, okay, I'm going to pay for Flight of Passage, and then I will get in advance, I'll get Navi River Journey, Kilimanjaro Safaris, and Dinosaur, or possibly Everest if I don't want to do single rider. Now you look at it and you go, okay, I wonder if they'll reinstitute tiers and have the 2 new ones as a tier, and then everything else is a tier 2. Possibly, though actually early on, they'll probably do virtual queue and individual single pass, what they call it. But not to get too far down that road, it just interests me about how Animal Kingdom's going to be. And again, this will all be open in 3 years. It sounds like, also I should mention, they're going to start construction in the fall. But again, they did not say when Dinosaur would close. I suspect they'll keep it open into next year, the way they described it. So I would love to ride Dinosaur again and get there and do that. It's just going to depend on my schedule and when I can get back to Walt Disney World. But nothing shocking here. I do think Encanto is a little more involved. I did not expect the carousel. I thought maybe actually Triceratops Spin Area would somehow be roped into something with Encanto. I do like technically that doesn't, I mean, it's IP that it's Disney characters, but at least they understand that you can have something that's not just connected to one film that's popular now. That I appreciate, even if it's still going to Disney characters, and the overall land I think is going to be beautiful. I think they'll do a great job, and I'm really interested where this is going. All right, let's get to the top 5. That last one could have easily been up in the top 5, but I got to talk about Disney Starlight, new Magic Kingdom Parade, number 5. This is one I had not expected either. I thought maybe they might bring back the Main Street Electrical Parade or something, or, do something where they move over, like Paint the Night or something. But no, brand new nighttime parade. Awesome. Such a good idea for the Magic Kingdom, and it's going to be next year. That is a big addition for next year. I mean, again, it's not going to completely move the needle, but it does give something extra you can do there. And the description says you're bringing everything to life, new stories about characters you love. the magic of the Blue Fairy, bringing characters from films like Peter Pan, Encanto, Frozen, and more. The specifics aren't even as important to me. I'm sure it'll be well done. I'm sure it's going to be a really cool parade, just judging by things like Magic Happens and some of the other changes they made, which have been really well done, or even Festival of Fantasy going further back. The Magic Kingdom needs a nighttime parade. And I think having that sooner is cool too, especially as, they start to build up. But you think about this park, and if they can do a really cool parade that lasts for a very long time, Happily Ever After is going nowhere. And then you're adding in several new lands, more on one in a bit. I think this is so good. When you have your flagship park, that's the thing. Part of it is like, well, why are they doing so much at Magic Kingdom? They're just building from strength. But you have your flagship park, you just added in Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and then you're adding in several other lands and stuff. It needs a nighttime parade. And I know that's true with Disneyland. I know that's a little different because Magic Happens daytime, but sometimes plays at night. But really here, the Magic Kingdom needs it. It has the space. It's something that completely changes the tenor of the entire day. It's so cool when they do things like Not So Scary and they have the parade there. They need to be doing this all the time, and can't wait to see it happen. It's a really good addition, and one that I hadn't really put on my bingo card as a top thing they might announce. Number 4, 2 new attractions being added to Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure, which will double the size of that land. One of them we already knew about, but we learned more. Construction of this expansion is going to begin next year, which ultimately will lead to there being 4 attractions if you count in Mission Breakout and Web Slingers at Avengers Campus. And really, this needed to happen sooner. This is something that they've kind of dragged their feet on, but I understand with the pandemic and everything that may have slowed them down. We did learn that the attraction we already knew about is called Avengers Infinity Defense. And they're basically described it as technology that allows the Avengers to jump between worlds has gone missing. King Thanos is using it to wreak havoc everywhere. Apparently, we are going to be recruits, and we're going to travel to locations like Asgard, Wakanda, and New York City alongside big and small, aka Ant-Man, heroes. You may also just find yourself face-to-face with King Thanos, too. This looks to be some sort of very high-tech simulator attraction, which we've seen a lot of concept art in the past, which involved, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and so many others. I suspect this is going to have a lot of characters. It's interesting, too, that they are really zoning in on simulators, though, with Avengers Campus. I know but even screens, you even have screens on Mission Breakout in a way, even though you're technically going up and down. And then you have all the screens on Web Slingers. And then this one appears, I think you're moving. I think it's more in line maybe with something like the updated version of the Universal Spider-Man technology. It's not entirely clear. They did show the ride vehicle in the Imagineering exhibit, which looked pretty cool. But, this is obviously going to be super popular. And if you're going to have your big Avengers land at California Adventure, you can't have it in Florida. You need to have more than just a pretty good Spider-Man ride and a fun, but also kind of rough, but fun attraction that is a variation on Tower of Terror that people like too. You need to have some more new things and really take advantage of all the different characters and excitement that you have. So I think it's great. I did not anticipate they would be announcing another attraction, which looks to be Kuka Robot Arms. Reminds me a bit of Sum of All Thrills. This one is called Stark Flight Lab, where you're going to sit in 2-person pods and deploy to a test station. A robot arm grabs your pod and whirls you around. It's interesting that this is unlike something like Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. It's not like, oh, you're on a bench and things are happening. It's that robot arm is basically whirling you around and you're having a simulated flight. And they did mention too that the flights could be different. So that's good for rewritability. It also looks like it might make me a little sick. So I don't know if I love that. Another thing to note too, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in there as Tony Stark for both attractions. He was not involved with the attraction in Hong Kong at the time. So I think it's cool that they've got him. They forked over the money. They got him coming back as Dr. Doom. And they also have him involved in both attractions, which I think is great. Hopefully they'll have some of the other actors, I suspect, being involved there. But I do like the fact they have another attraction. This one, to me, they finally maybe found a way. It's only two-person pods, which makes me wonder on capacity, but it's kind of the secondary attraction. I have talked for a while about the need for complementary attractions. And I don't mean bad attractions. What I mean is you have your Super E ticket, but you need to beef it up with other things to do. And now it almost turns Web Slingers into a secondary attraction along with Dark Flight Lab. And obviously this big attraction is the one, Divinity Defense seems like it will be the headliner of the land. And that's exactly how it should be. The Spider-Man attraction should not be the lead headliner. It should be like Smuggler's Run to Rise of the Resistance. And this is where I think they're adding 4 there. Disney should be doing the same thing at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And I know I'm just saying they're making all these announcements. I'm like, what else can you do, Disney? But this shows, especially if they continue to have all the characters and the shows and everything else going on, plus Pim's Test Kitchen and everything else, to have 4 attractions, this land's going to really hit. And especially California Adventure is just going to continue getting that way as I roll into number 3, which is a new Avatar land at Disney California Adventure. You're like, Dan, how could you pick Avatar above Marvel and Indiana Jones? It's because Disney has found a way through Pandora, the World of Avatar, to expand on the movies and do something that makes them better for theme parks than they are as movies. This one's going to be inspired by Avatar, The Way of Water. This is something that we know something was coming forever, basically, it feels like. Bob Iger, since he's come back, has just loved talking about Avatar because he just loves how much money The Way of Water made and how much money he anticipates the movie, which I think is called like Fire and Ash, the 3rd movie, will make next year. Around Christmas time, which is, again, when The Way of Water was released. And hey, I haven't gone to the movie theaters as much, but I did go see Way of Water in the movie theater. Haven't watched it since, though I did enjoy it. I probably should watch it at some point on Disney Plus, but I don't know if it's going to hold up as well. But this is where I think they are using, for what I can tell, this is a boat ride, but it's not a boat ride in a slow-moving Navi River journey type way. It appears to be a boat ride using more like the Pirates of the Caribbean technology, where the boat can move around. Because they talk about how something goes wrong, and then you kind of get pulled in various directions, and it's going to connect to the land, which the land looks entirely different than Pandora at Disney Animal Kingdom, which that's really impressive. I really appreciate that they're doing this versus bringing in like Flight of Passage and some small ride or something, creating an entirely new land from Avatar. And this is where it really helps that they are doing a new movie, because Disney feels like it's synergy in a way where it's not just like, oh, you like this movie, you like this ride. It's like, oh, you like this ride, you'll go see this movie. Obviously, the ride will not be open when the movie comes out, but if they do a 4th Avatar film, obviously it might be. So this is going to be super interesting. And I should also note they brought up Ali Rubenstein on stage to announce this land, who isn't a household name, but had worked at Disney for 22 years. She was in the Imagineering Story episode about Shanghai Disneyland and was executive producer of the castle there. She had left for a while, worked at Meow Wolf, also worked at Airbnb, so did some other things and then came back. I had actually forgotten that they announced that she came back recently. I followed her pretty closely because at one point I was trying to get her on the podcast and it didn't end up working out. But I will say that having her involved, given her history, kind of like Bruce Vaughan, is really cool. And, so you have people, like, I know Disney's lost a lot of great talent, either to Universal or just they laid them off and they went and worked in some other industry or for some other company. But Disney is going to need to beef up their Imagineering ranks again to do so many things, I suspect. But having somebody like Ali, at least from the little I know, I don't know her personally, is really impressive. But I will say the reason this interests me so much is how much I love Pandora, the World of Avatar. I think that and just this attraction looks to be like next level, even more. This excites me more than Avengers Infinity Defense, this attraction. And it's not because I don't like the MCU. I like those films more than I like the Avatar films. But in a theme park sense, I think this is going to be really interesting. There's going to be a big land. They didn't really announce if there's going to be any other attractions or anything else there. I assume it's going to have dining and everything else, but there's going to be something else in this land. But I know the big thing they focus on was a boat ride. Again, another boat ride, which is awesome. And just a lot of things to like about this land from what I've seen from, again, it's concept art, but given what Disney did so far with Pandora in Animal Kingdom, and this is going to be entirely different. I really appreciate that they spotlighted how different this is going to be. All right, we got 2 left. These are really 1A and 1B to me, and we don't even know that much. It's just that, come on. What are you going to say? This is one where Disney did a really good job of making it seem like multiple times that the presentation was over. And because they had announced Cars earlier for Beyond Big Thunder, they never said the words Beyond Big Thunder, but for the Edge of Frontierland, I kind of thought, well, I guess that's what they're doing there. They're not going to do it. Even though Disney had made reference to villains when they talked about Fortnite. But near the end, this got the biggest reaction from the crowd. And the next one I talk about is probably the second biggest, which is Villains Land coming to the Magic Kingdom. So that sink in, and it's funny because part of me goes, this isn't like Universal Monsters. I've never really thought of Disney villains as being like their own thing. I mean, yes, you have like situations like the Not So Scary Parade where you see all the different villains or fireworks and all that. And you got Maleficent, you got, Chernabog and Hades and all these different villains. Something like this could make Disney villains more of a thing. And I know for diehard fans, it's already a thing, but think of all the different villains. You could have, Scar, Jafar, Ursula, just so many. Dr. Facilier could finally get something happening there. Disney announced there's going to be 2 major attractions. Now, we only really saw one big piece of concept art, which people have already zoned in and said it looks like, which would make sense to me, there's a roller coaster there. That is not official. This, again, I saw Taylor by Even Coaster Studios zooming in to see. It's like, I think there's a coaster there. There probably will be. I mean, if I was them, I would put in one like fun dark ride that most people can do, but that is very high tech, and then put in some sort of more thrilling ride, put the two together. It almost functions like a Land at Epic Universe, but only 2 attractions, which I was kind of hoping they would do more. They kind of learned their lesson from these lands with just 2 attractions like Pandora and Galaxy's Edge. But when you have something like Village, you could add additional attractions, or there might even be more that gets added in the future. But 2 major attractions, dining and shopping, on an incredibly twisted grand scale. Josh described it, said it's going to be a fearless new vision for what a Disney experience can be. This is great. This is great. What can I say? I don't know anything about it really, but it's a new addition to the Magic Kingdom. And unlike Cars, it's one where I think this could really be something special. I kind of know what that Cars Land is going to be. Not saying the attractions will be great. I love Racers Strings Racers. But here I feel like, there's so many things they could do. And if you think about the Magic Kingdom, and if you have Big Thunder Mountain Railroad leading into Cars Land, and then, you've got on the other side Fantasyland leading into Villains Land. Now, you can rope it around. Somehow Cars Land, I have no idea how that would connect to Villains Land, but, you do your best. Rope the 2 around, and then you've got a full park where you can get all the way around, and traffic is so much better. Everything is so much better. And if you do 2 major classic great attractions, and also the land itself looks cool, Disney, if there's anything that Disney could do, I mean, there's no real answer to Epic Universe because that's an entirely new park. But if you think about lands that people could look at and go, okay, this makes me want to go to the Magic Kingdom, more than Cars, this is the type of land that would make people want to go and check it out. Now, it's only one land, but it's something that I think, I'm glad that they're willing to do it. It's going to cost them a ton. You heard by the reaction of the crowd that people are into this. Cars Land didn't get much of a reaction. People are really into this. And I think if Disney hits it out of the park, this could really change the entire scale. Because if you think about it, if this becomes the new go-to spot in the Magic Kingdom, you've still got Tron over there. You've got Space Mountain. You've got Seven Dwarfs Mine Train over there. It just really shifts the park. And then you have this other side where you have Tiana's Bayou Adventure. You got Cars, which people will be into probably. And then you have this whole area. And you still have things like Pirates and Haunted Mansion and everything else. I wonder if Haunted Mansion could somehow drift into Villains Land, if there's a way to kind of connect that from back there. That would be interesting too. But there's just so much that interests me here. And I know it's going to be a while before Disney does much on this. This feels more like, I know this is not Blue Sky. I think they're going to definitely do it. They wouldn't announce it like this if they weren't going to do it. People would just riot if they weren't. But it sounds really cool. Now, that easily could have been number 1. The reason I listed this one as number 1 is because, 1, I didn't know anything about it. I had heard about the rumors about this thing 20 years ago, but it seemed like it was never going to happen. I even remember talking to Dan Cockerell, who was a VP there, who said that at one point that was coming up, and he actually convinced them not to do it because he said that they didn't need another big thrill ride at Hollywood Studios, that they needed other things at the park, like kids rides and everything, and that ultimately may have led to Toy Story Land, not just him, but overall. But still, that's an interesting story if you haven't checked it out, that he talked about that. But if you didn't know already, this is number one is they're adding a Monsters Inc. land to Disney Hollywood Studios. And another reason this stands out to me is Hollywood Studios is in such a need of more attractions and more ride capacity. Now, it looks like there may only be one attraction here, but maybe they could do a second one. Heck, you could even do like a somewhat similar ride to what they have at California Adventure. Hopefully better. But regardless, Disney is adding a Monstropolis to Disney Hollywood Studios. Now, granted, if it's just one attraction, you're almost continuing to just focus on headliners in this park, which is what they do. Of course, if you keep adding headliners, you're eventually going to turn things like Tower of Terror or Toy Story Mania or others into secondary attractions, even when they're really not, which has already kind of happened a little bit with Toy Story Mania. But you're adding this, and so this is after the events of Monsters, Inc. They need laughter to power the city and keep it running smoothly. That's familiar. I think I've heard about that somewhere else. But you're going to hear laughs and zoom through the building, going through doors. It is the first ever suspended coaster ever in a Disney park. Now, I've seen a lot of these around the world, including one for How to Train Your Dragon that I recently saw. I forget where exactly, but it was in Coast in the Desert with Coaster Studios, which was super cool. They're also going to have claws grabbing the doors and everything else. I suspect maybe some of this is screens and some of it is in person. Suspended coaster, probably from Vekoma, because they do work with them pretty often. New Vekoma, which is better. This is going to be cool. I think the reason I listed one is just because it was completely unexpected. I mean, I remember for years, Jim Hill on Disney Dish and everywhere else would probably even before Disney Dish, would talk about it being just that they were going to do it, that they were going to do this door coaster. So Jim Hill, you are finally correct. But regardless, I am also glad that Disney is focusing something on Disney's Hollywood Studios, because what they tend to do with their parks is once they add a big addition, they tend to take a break. And I know we have Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land, but Galaxy's Edge opened in 2019. So Disney needs to continue. And I know we had Runaway Railway, so they have added things more recently. But still, they need to continue to add more things, especially to a park that has things that are going to make it popular, but maybe doesn't have enough to do. And this one was a big surprise to me. They had Billy Crystal on stage. It took me a minute to go, wait, is that Billy Crystal? And then he starts singing and everything and cracking bad jokes. Like, oh, yeah, that's Billy Crystal. But presented this, and when he came out, my first thought was, why is Billy Crystal out there? And then my second thought was, it's going to be Monsters, Inc. And then I thought in my head, wow, it would be great if it was at Hollywood Studios. But I didn't think it would be. And then they announced it. I was like, oh, yeah. And then I thought for a second, I was like, is this going to be like Ride and Go Seek? It's like, oh, no, they're doing the door coaster. Somebody found it in a drawer, and they're getting it out of there. So that sums up. I did it. We did it. 25. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. If there's something that I didn't go into that you're like, hey, Dan, you forgot they announced this. I'm not going through all of the fake Deadpool announcements or whatever. It's a lot. And the fact is I combined some things and everything else and still had 25 entries and didn't even hit every single dot. There's a few things that I didn't give a separate thing to, like the year that World of Frozen is coming out and everything else. Now, when will all this stuff happen? That is the big question. We know some things are coming in 2025. New parade at the Magic Kingdom, test track updates, some lounges. Tiana's is coming this year, and then the Walt Disney animatronics. So there are some things coming in 2025. A few more in 2026, or even at the end of 2025, we have the Zootopia show also. A few more in 2026, like the update with Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. You're going to have that there happen in 2026. You're also going to have World of Frozen open, like I said. But it seems like really when things take off, yes, nighttime shows, everything else, 2027, that's when things really start to take off because that's when the new Animal Kingdom update is going to happen. When will Cars come to Frontierland? They say that is going to start in early 2025, so maybe 2027, but it would make sense for Disney to make 2027 the year when we update Animal Kingdom. Then the next year we add Cars and have that happen. And you're going to do multiple things in the same year because that knocks out a bit of them. Maybe 2028 then too is when you have Avengers Infinity Defense, Avatar Way of Water, some of those things. I feel like the last 3 years of this decade, 2027, 2028, 2029, there's going to be a lot of new things. Because when you announced this year, At most, I'm thinking things like 5 years, like Villain's Land, if it hasn't broke ground. But I would think 3 or 4 is more likely, and maybe even 2 if they really push it. One ride with Monsters, Inc., you should be able to do that in 3 years. But when are you breaking ground? And where is that going? We don't really know. That's another thing with Avatar. We don't really know where exactly that's going to DCA. They didn't put a map on the thing to show. They didn't say anything that was leaving. That'll probably come in the future as things, because, when you're first announcing something, that you're going to give an update a year from now or further on in Disney Parks blog or when things close. But where that's going, I don't really know. I know where the Avengers Campus stuff is going. I don't know where. I don't exactly know. I hope. I'm going to get very annoyed if Disney gets rid of Tom Sawyer Island or if Disney gets rid of the Liberty Square Riverboat. I want them working around the rivers of America. If they have to do a little chop off like they did with Galaxy's Edge, okay, that's fine. But I don't want this new Magic Kingdom stuff messing with my Liberty Square Riverboat, my old man attraction. I want to get older and still be able to stand on there and ride that. Where is Monsters, Inc. going? We don't really know. I would hope it'd be something. It is not going to take out, I don't think it's taking out Rock and Roller Coaster. I don't think. I think it's more likely to be an addition kind of back where maybe Launch Bay, maybe there's other areas you could do. There's expansion pads. Whatever you do, Disney, find a way to connect everything so it all flows better, so there's fewer dead ends. Where's that going? We don't really know. We don't really know where Coco's going. We have a pretty good gauge if you really dug into how things are lined up with Animal Kingdom. Smarter people who really study this stuff will do that for me. All right. Well, what did you think of that? I hope you're excited. That's the thing, is that I don't need anyone to love everything they're doing. I don't love everything they're doing. There's lots of different things I would do. I like how Deadpool made some jokes about fixing the Yeti. And I'm like, wow, because it's Deadpool, he's able to make jokes about fixing the Yeti. That's pretty cool. That's something fun. There's plenty of things that they could do that they haven't done so far. It really interests me. There's differences I would want, but still, there's a lot of cool stuff that I can't wait to see overall just coming that they announced. It's pretty great stuff. Just want to take a moment to give a quick thanks to a few of the members of the Tomorrow Society through Patreon. I give thanks to Justin Baden, Christopher Polt, and Clay Benton. Thanks to you guys. You've all been long-time patrons of the Tomorrow Society going back to 2019. Thank you all so much for helping to keep this show going. And I've got a lot of interviews that I'm looking to set up going forward. I know this is another one where it's just me talking, but I promise we got interviews coming out. I'm really looking to connect with cool people, and all of your support makes a difference. If you would like to learn how to support the Tomorrow Society podcast and get access to some really cool perks, go to patreon.com/Tomorrow Society to learn more, or you can make a one-time donation to the show and buy me a Dole Whip. Thank you all so much for all the awesome support, and I hope you're enjoying the show. These types of shows are fun to do just because there's so much excitement right now about what Disney announced, and I really enjoy that too. You can also go back and check out past episodes of the Tomorrow Society podcast. You can go to tomorrowsociety.com/podcast to the S at the end, or just search back. All the episodes of the show, 238 past episodes, are all out there on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Overcast or wherever you listen. So you can always check those out. And while you're there, if you're able to rate or review the podcast, it really makes a difference. Thank you so much. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me, dan@tomorrowsociety.com, or follow me on all the social media at TomorrowSOC. And check out the YouTube channel. I just posted a bunch of videos from Lost Island, if you heard that trip report. Continuing to post more. Going to post some vlogs from destinations in St. Louis coming up soon. So check that out. Or any of those, just search for Tomorrow Society and you can find me. The music you're hearing right now, written by Adam Hookey, performed by the Sophisticated Babies. Thank you so much for listening to this long, epic response to the many announcements at the D23 2024 Ultimate Fan Event. Next time, I will be talking with Shane Bettenhausen. He recently went on a trip to Fantasy Springs at Tokyo Disney Sea. And we're going to talk all about his experiences on all the attractions there, plus just a lot more. We're focusing an entire episode just on first-hand experiences at the Tokyo Disney Resort. And Shane has a lot of background, has gone there a bunch of times, so it was a really fun conversation. I hope you're all doing awesome out there. Thanks again for listening to this show, and I will talk to you again very soon. great singers. Another one with, oh my God, what is the name of that show? And the other one from So Help Me Todd. Is that what it's called? Another one from Skylar Astin from Darren Criss from Glee, Skylar Astin from So Help Me Todd,